What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the hater, up in this piece. It's Monday night and I'm outside, which means three things. Number one, it's cold as hell, so I'm cold. Number two, it's Monday Night Raw review. And number three, hater outdoors. So let's get to it without any further ado and go through this show like we tend to do, segment by segment. All right? So the show starts out and Drew McIntyre comes out first. You see him in the back in gorilla position, before he comes out. I don't know why they do this. Why not just surprise the fans with the theme music so they can get excited? Instead, they show them what's going to happen before it happens, and then nobody cheers. Anyways, Drew McIntyre comes out and cuts a boring promo. Basically, he says that nobody cares about him. When he says nobody, he means the people in the back, meaning the wrestlers, as well as the fans. I don't understand why he's saying this. He's totally right. Nobody does care about him. But anyways, he's pretending to be turning heel, but he has been perfectly consistent throughout all of this, right? So this is not like a new Drew McIntyre, even though he presents it as such. It's the same Drew McIntyre that got his ass beat by CM Punk. But anyways, that's how that goes down. Sami Zayn comes out next and talks about how he also lost things, and so have all the fans. This is a complete waste of time, and it's also very lame. And I don't know what the point of this is. Basically, he's saying to Drew, you're not special, right? We already know this. But the thing the hater got out of this is, why is everyone talking about their feelings and their personal losses? Now, while I can empathize with Drew McIntyre, or Drew, whatever his name is, Drew Galloway, the actor who plays the character of Drew McIntyre, right? As far as I'm concerned, Drew McIntyre, the character, doesn't have a family. I don't care about Drew McIntyre's family. Drew Galloway is the actor. Imagine if you're watching Mission Impossible and at some point Tom Cruise just turns around, looks at the screen and says, "Man, it really sucked getting divorced from Nicole Kidman." And then he turns around and goes back into character. What the hell is that? I don't care about Tom Cruise and his marriage in the context of the movie. You know what I mean? Keep things separate. But Drew McIntyre decides to make it to blur the lines. So anyways, sucks that he lost somebody, but this is not the time nor place to do that, right? Stone Cold never talked about this. John Cena even never talked about this. The Rock's sure as hell never talked about this. The Undertaker didn't have a family. He was a demon from hell. You know what I mean? Kane was his family, and he's the brother that he burned alive. So go back to that. You know what I mean? Go back to a time when kayfabe was a thing. But anyways, this leads to Sami challenging Drew to a match. They just had a match last Saturday. Drew McIntyre reminds him of this and says, "I don't know why you keep challenging me to matches. I keep kicking your ass. You've never beaten me." Sami has nothing to say to that, but basically punches Drew in the face. Very odd. He hit him for no reason. Drew McIntyre didn't do anything to aggress Sami Zayn. I mean, in the past he did, but they had their match. And this time, Drew McIntyre, even though he spent the vast majority of his promo saying how he's going to start taking things now, he let Sami Zayn go. He said, "Go back to your wife and kid." Sami attacks him. Drew starts beating his ass. Jey Uso comes and saves him. Whatever. We go into commercial. It was not a good opening segment, but it does lead to the Drew McIntyre and Sami Zayn match later on in the main event. Obviously a main event in name only, because ain't no way this would be considered a main event in any other capacity. Anyways, the next match we have is the Io Sky match of the week. Before this, Pure Jobber Collective is talking to Adam Pearce. Sonya Deville wants the spot of somebody who got hurt, but it's apparently somebody that they hurt. I don't know who they're talking about, nor do I give a rat's ass. Adam Pearce says Io Sky is getting that spot. So the match is Io Sky versus Natalya versus somebody else who I cannot remember right now. You know what I'm saying? It'll come to me. Alba Fire, right? So basically, Natalya doesn't win. I kind of thought she should, because I feel like the Intercontinental title is a great prop for Natalya, who has already been women's champion and clearly is an undercard wrestler now. But anyways, Io Sky, I should say, hits the moonsault and pins Natalya. I saw this debate in some comment section where someone was like, "Io Sky never botches." She botched the moonsault in this match. She barely hit it, as usual. You know what I mean? She botches in every match. But anyways, she goes through. Then they cut back to Judgment Day. Carlito's wearing a Christmas hat, and everyone's pissed off. Finn and Liv Morgan are doing I'm not talking to each other directly, So Finn's like, JD, can you please tell Liv? And Liv says, Raquel, can you please tell Finn? And it's really stupid because it's like this struggle for power, but it's like the Judgment Day as a faction is basically a jobber faction at this point. It's like all they do is lose. You know what I mean? They don't feel like a real faction, and they're so far from the faction that Edge started many years ago that it doesn't even feel like they should even be on TV. But here they are. Next up, we have Chad Gable versus Tozawa. For what this was, it was a pretty decent match. Obviously, Chad Gable is going to win because he's the leader of his team, and Tozawa is a lackey, and a former lackey at that, of Chad Gable himself. Gable basically like counters the Tozawa senton by lifting up his knees, does like a triple German, then does a power bomb into the ankle lock and makes Tozawa tap out. He doesn't let go of the hold. Otis comes. The Creed brothers come. They have a stare down. Otis wins the stare down. Nothing to see here. This is just basically like neither of these teams have anything to do, so they're back to working with each other. You know what I mean? It's like once the Wyatt family is done with the Final Testament, maybe they can go back to feuding with Chad Gable. You know what I mean? Like that's all that's happening. This is like the undercard. You know, like Chad Gable has no aspirations of being anything more than an undercard wrestler at this point. You know, during the match, Wade Barrett is like, "This is the best Chad Gable's ever been." And it's like, okay, I see that because they are pushing him to an extent in the sense that he's actually getting consistent TV time. But Chad Gable, don't get it twisted. Chad Gable is not even a mid-carder. Chad Gable is an undercard wrestler. Here's how you know. The probability of Chad Gable being on the main card at WrestleMania is effectively zero. There is a 0 chance that he's going to be there. And if he is, it's going to be part of some multi-man, like 12-person match. But anyways, that happened. After this, we have Dominic Mysterio running into the New Day. Earlier in the segment, where Judgment Day was pissed off, he said he's going to have a match against Damien Priest, and he has a plan. So basically, he runs into the New Day. The New Day are like, you understand us, right? And Dominic says, no, that was like whack, even though I don't like Big E, right? And then Xavier says, you look like a broke Tom Selleck. Now, this is why people like Xavier should never be allowed to attempt humor, because he's not funny. Xavier Woods is just not a funny guy. You know what I mean? He's like a dork. He's endearing. You know what I mean? Like, he's witty, right? But there's a big difference between being witty and being funny. Like, Xavier can come out and play the Final Fantasy winning theme, you know, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da on his trombone like he used to once in a while. And it's like, oh, that's cool. Like, you know, you watch it, you're like, oh, I know where that's from. That's what he's good at. He's not good at humor. And this joke, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because, quite frankly, it doesn't merit any discussion. But Dominic Mysterio looks nothing like Tom Selleck. He just has a mustache. That's the only thing. Otherwise, it couldn't be any more different. Tom Selleck is like super manly, and Dominic is not. And I understand that's part of the joke because Dominic says, Tom Selleck wishes, right? But it's just not a good joke, you know? A better joke would have been something like when The Rock looked at Eddie Guerrero and said, you look like if Cheech Martin had sex with a retarded hyena. You know, like that's a great joke, right? Because Cheech Martin has like all the mannerisms that are stereotypically like Latino and the mustache, and Eddie Guerrero has hair like a fucking hyena's mane. You know what I mean? And also, Cheech Martin, for those who don't know, played one of the hyenas in Lion King. The hyenas in the Lion King were basically a group of Mexicans. You know, like, these are little forms of racism that Disney got away with. But basically, they were like a group of like 3 like lowrider type Mexicans. You know what I mean? So anyways, it is what it is. But the point is, it wasn't funny. Then we have a pretend match. So this is the problem with this show specifically. We had a bunch of matches that weren't really matches. So the first of these was Dominic Mysterio versus Damien Priest. We spent 100 years on the fucking entrances, and then it's just an ambush by the Judgment Day cuckolds. You know, JD's dressed like Santa Claus, but obviously Damien Priest realizes this, starts fighting them, then they gang up on him and they beat his ass. At that point, the War Jobbers come out, and the War Jobbers and Damien Priest beat the hell out of the far more minuscule and diminutive Judgment Day, right? It's almost ridiculous. It's like, in real life, even though there's like 5 people in the Judgment Day, like, it's believable that Damien Priest and Eric and Ivar would destroy them all, because it's like, just Eric and Ivar would probably destroy everybody there, because they're just like, they are big, strong dudes, for better or for worse. But anyways, after this, we have like a Seth Rollins sit-down interview with like Kathy Kelly, or whatever the fuck this girl's name is, you know? I just called her Kathy Kelly because to me, they're all the same, motherfuckers. They're all the same. All the Kathy Kellys are the same. I don't have time to learn their names, cuts. Remember when Renee Paquette, or what was her name? What was her name, WWE? Renee Young when Renee Young was the thing, and everyone was like, oh, she's going to be around forever and be a big deal. And then, like, she was complete shit. Then they put her on the announce team, and she's like literally the worst announcer of all time, including guest announcers. And we had to tolerate this. She took Booker T's job. And Booker T is a great announcer. But the neckbeard community doesn't understand this. They're like, JBL and Booker T and Taz are not good commentators. I'd much rather prefer having Corey Graves. That's why you're a dork. Corey Graves is a dork. And everyone we just mentioned would beat his ass. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, that happens. Seth Rollins doesn't say anything here. As usual, Seth Rollins doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And Seth Rollins basically says, I'm going to beat up CM Punk. I'm going to show him. I have to, instead of saying I have to exorcise this demon, he says, I have to extract this demon from me. I have to extract it. It's going to be raw. It's going to be visceral. No, it won't. I bet you in the first 2 minutes, CM Punk or Seth Rollins are going to go for like a roll-up. I bet you they're going to go for that. So enough of this, like it's going to be visceral. Visceral means nobody goes for a pin. You never go for like a roll-up in a grudge match. The point is you want to destroy the other guy. Not you want to beat him in a wrestling match, right? More on that a little bit later because it comes up again. Cucks. Anyways, then we continue. After this, The Miz comes out to wrestle Dexter Lumis. The crowd could not care less about Dexter Lumis. I mean, how could they? But nevertheless, if you thought that they would, you were wrong because they didn't at all, right? The Miz is a former 2-time WWE champion. The Miz is someone that should be plowing through the likes of Dexter Lumis, who I believe literally has not won one match clean in his entire main roster career. At least a singles match. But he doesn't plow through them. AOP come out, Dexter Lumis dives to the outside to destroy them. Karrion Kross comes and attacks Dexter Lumis. They throw him in the ring, they surround him. Karrion Kross starts saying, we got you again, we got you again. The lights go off, the Wyatt Six come out, but without Bo Dallas, and they beat up everybody. Eric Rowan takes the smallest member, Nikki Cross, who is also a woman, and power bombs her to the outside on top of 4 very large men. I didn't like that. I didn't like the optics of that. Just do it to Joe Gacy or something, why are you throwing the woman out? But anyways, that's how they roll. The Wyatt Six is just atrocious. I mean, Eric Rowan just comes out with wearing furs. I don't know what's up with this guy and wearing furs. It's never gonna happen, bro. We get it. You think you're some Viking, you know what I mean? Go join the Viking Raiders or fucking beat it, you know what I mean? I don't understand the point of Eric Rowan. I don't like him. I never have. I always thought he was just terrible at his job. And Joe Gacy has done absolutely nothing to impress me, except for his early run in NXT, where he had the SJW gimmick. Remember when he was a fat dude who wanted to be the cruiserweight champion? That was great. They should have stuck with that. But instead, now he's just another crazy guy. Him and Dexter Lumis are literally just 2 jobbers, just holding on to their jobs by a thread. Once this Wyatt Six thing goes away, they're going to be released immediately. They're going to be the next Mansoor and Mace. You know what I mean? Mace, whatever the fuck his name is. But all that went down. Once again, we get another match that ends with DQ. It's not really a match. It's just an ambush. The fact that they've presented it as if it's The Miz versus Dexter Lumis doesn't change the fact that everything that happened could have just happened as part of a brawl. But I will say this. These matches that are presented as matches but aren't really matches, at least because they're presented as matches, they happen in the ring so the fans get to see it. But other than that, I didn't enjoy it at all. Next up, we have a pretty good segment. First, we have a recap of the New Day reunion. New Day come out, and they say that Wade Barrett is like Big E in that they're not man enough to get back in the ring. Wade Barrett says, I'm retired, right? And it's realistically, it's that if Wade Barrett wanted to, he would just beat the shit out of both of these guys at the same time. You know what I'm saying? He's retired, but Wade Barrett is a big motherfucker. You know what I mean? He's big and he's strong, and you can just tell he's a tough guy, And also, we know this because he was a bare-knuckle brawler. He was a bare-knuckle brawler. Boom! The bullhammer. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But basically, then the New Day get in the ring, and this is just comedy gold, This further establishes that Kofi Kingston has unlimited comedic potential. Basically, Kofi Kingston gets the mic, and being that he was raised in Boston, he's like, this is supposed to be a homecoming for me, And now I'm getting booed. And he's like, my mother is here, right? He does a proper introduction to his mother. And he says, and at first I caught this, and then Wade Barrett made it a point. But I would have liked if Wade Barrett didn't say anything, and if it was just a subtle joke. Because Kofi Kingston says something hilarious. He says, my mom flew here in the middle seat for 14 hours from Ghana or whatever, right? Just the fact that it's the middle seat makes it hilarious. Because it shows the kind of person Kofi Kingston is. Presumably, Kofi Kingston is a very wealthy man, right? I mean, obviously, he's rich because he's had like a 20-year WWE career. But even in kayfabe, like, he's a wealthy guy, and it's like he's too cheap to get his mom like a good seat to fly over. He got her the middle seat, right? That's hilarious, right? It goes towards Kofi Kingston's nefariousness, and it's consistent with his like heel turn. And then he goes to his mom. The mom's like disappointed. She's like not yelling at Kofi because she's like a dignified woman. She also, I think this is like actually his mother because she looks just like him. It's kind of weird. It's like, you know what I mean? She just looks just like Kofi. But anyway, she's obviously upset and disappointed at Kofi and Xavier, for like betraying Big E. And she starts walking away, and Kofi Kingston's like, Mom! And it was just really funny because it's like, we all know this. It was a very relatable segment in many ways, right? We all know that situation where our parents are disappointed in us, and it's like, and we don't think they should be, but they are, right? And it still sucks. But this is kind of like the character arc of Kofi and Xavier now. The character arc that they're experiencing is that like they think everyone's against them, and they feel justified in doing what they did. And even though they're heels, there's some truth to that, right? Like, okay, obviously you don't make fun of your friend who has like a neck injury and he can't wrestle. You don't say all that stuff, but like they did, you know what I mean? So this is where we find ourselves. And the fact of the matter is that that's number one, hilarious. And number two, there is some truth to it in the sense that like, why didn't Big E come back when they first started having issues, right? And I really like this character arc of New Day. It's getting to the point where we need a payoff, right? Or a next feud. It looks like it might be with Rey Mysterio, but I don't know. We'll see, right? It's just a good idea. I think they should just get the tag team titles because then that would justify them coming out every week, right? And wrestling. And when doing that, they can then make those points, So that's how that is. Afterwards, we're going to commercial, but when we come back, New Day's in the back, and Rey Mysterio is there, and he's like, sorry, I was out of line last week, but you guys were out of pocket for, doing that to Big E. And Kofi and Xavier are like, no, we weren't. Like, we're not going to apologize for anything because Rey Mysterio demands an apology, right, for the locker room, I guess, right? And Kofi and Xavier, this is part of their character. Their character is like that they don't think they did anything wrong, They're like, what? And in some ways, again, they're right. Okay, fine. Maybe they have an issue with Big E, but there's no reason why Rey Mysterio should be upset at them because Big E's part of the locker room. You just had Dexter Lumis kidnap The Miz. Why aren't you upset at that? You have people betraying each other all the time, Like all the heels, by this logic, wouldn't be allowed to dress in the locker room. And then what happens when the heel turns face? Like, why is Jey Uso allowed to dress in the locker room after making like everyone's life a living hell when he was part of the bloodline? But anyways, neither here nor there. Basically, they tell Rey Mysterio, like, we're not going to apologize. And Rey says, got it, now you're on your own. And then he says, get used to hearing New Day sucks. Now, this was interesting, but it's like people are already starting to chant that, so there was no need for Rey Mysterio to put that over, but it is what it is. Then after this, we have the main event. The main event is going to be Drew McIntyre versus Sami Zayn. The match is a complete disaster. Number one, we saw this match last Saturday. Number two, nobody cares. Number three, just like last Saturday, it doesn't matter who wins and loses. But since we cover everything segment by segment, what happens basically is this. The finish is Sami Zayn does the exploder suplex into the corner to set up for the haluva kick. He goes, but he can't do it because his back hurts. So he goes for it. He kind of like stumbles. Then he tries to like re-energize himself and do it again. But as he's getting ready to do it again, Drew McIntyre is basically up. Sami Zayn just runs. Drew McIntyre claymores him in the face and pins his jobber ass. Then after this, Jey Uso comes to like help out, Sami Zayn. And he goes up the top rope to hit Drew McIntyre with a Uso splash. Tama Tonga comes out of nowhere, pushes Jey Uso's monkey ass out, right? And then those three jobbers, the new bloodline, come, and they just beat the shit out of Jey Uso. Now, the whole time I'm thinking, wait a second, hater. You know what I mean? You keep calling these three guys jobbers, but it's like, they're actually doing what you want people to do, Jacob Fatu, and even Tama Tonga, and even Tonga Loa until he got injured, and obviously Sosakua, they're doing what I want them to do. They're making their presence felt now also on Raw. Pretty cool, right? You basically go out there, they just start laying waste to Sami Zayn and to Jey Uso. Now, there's only three of them, so in order for this to make sense, they have to have the numbers advantage. Jimmy Uso, for some reason, isn't there, right? I guess he's on SmackDown now, but the same way that Sol Sikoa is on SmackDown, and he came to Raw, like, what's Jimmy Uso doing, right? And obviously the more important question is Roman Reigns, who should be like everywhere at all times, given the magnitude of the importance of the match that he's going to have in 2 weeks, is not there either. So they have a 3-on-2 advantage. They whoop that ass. Solo Sikoa does the Samoan spike, which, as I've said many times, the Samoan moveset is extremely limited and very, very boring. But I've also said at the same time that the Samoan spike is one of my favorite finishers literally of all time. I love the Samoan spike as a concept, right? Whoever invented it, presumably Umaga, is a genius, rest in peace, for inventing it. Because it's a move that like doesn't hurt at all, right? It is the perfect wrestling move. It doesn't hurt anybody, but it looks like it kills you for some reason, right? Just the notion of having someone's thumb, right? Someone's erect thumb, especially if it's like taped up or he's wearing gloves or something, right? The thumb being jammed into your like, you know, into your aorta, right? Into your aortic artery or wherever the fuck it's supposed to hit in the voice box, I don't know, in your throat, just in your neck generally, just feels like something that would kill you, that would hurt a lot. If someone really wanted to do this, it would be like almost getting stabbed a little bit, right? But because it's like such a easy move to make look devastating, right? It's not devastating at all. It's a perfect finisher. So nobody can ever get hurt taking it, right? And it's entertaining. It's better than like doing a top rope splash, in my opinion, right? So he hits the Samoan spike on these two jobbers and stacks them, right? And now, this is like the 10th week since Roman Reigns' return that the new bloodline like is dominant. If you really think about it, beyond the fact that the new bloodline has accomplished nothing in terms of titles, beyond their shitty like tag team title run that nobody could possibly remember, beyond that, they're extremely dominant. You know what I mean? Like, they've won almost all their matches. They've lost Roman Reigns once, right? But they're not deterred by the fact that Roman Reigns beat them at War Games. As a matter of fact, Joe Tessitore, a.k.a. New Michael Cole, points this out. He's like, well, you know, like Roman Reigns pinned Solo at War Games. And it's like, so what? Like, it didn't change anything, right? So, with that, the next question becomes, well, what's going to happen after the bloodline, you know, tribal war games, whatever, what the fuck's it called? Tribal warfare. Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. The match for the Ulafala cuckolds, what's going to happen after that? Well, now it sure as shit looks like Drew McIntyre is going to end up screwing Roman Reigns. But let's just say that, like, Roman Reigns wins, right? At this point, I think it's 50-50 with the Drew McIntyre situation. But let's say Roman Reigns wins. You know what I mean? So what, right? Does this mean that Solo Sikoa is no longer allowed to hang out with Tama Tonga and what's his face, Jacob Fatu? If so, then it's worthwhile. But if Solo Sikoa is still going to be the leader of this new bloodline, maybe they'll call them, like, I don't know, the Island Boys, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. The point is, if they still follow him without the Ulafala, then what was the point of the Ulafala? And at this juncture, I don't think there's a reason to break up the Solo Sikoa faction. They could be a decent mid-card level faction with a logical conclusion of Jacob Fatu eventually turning against Solo Sikoa, just like Solo Sikoa tried to turn on Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. It writes itself. It's a good little mid-card feud. You can solve it at WrestleMania. You know, you have like a built-in match there, you know, at WrestleMania, or maybe like the SmackDown before WrestleMania. I don't think it should be at WrestleMania, but you know what I'm saying. You know, what would be the point of ending this? So it's like, at the same time, it's like, let's just say Drew McIntyre costs Roman Reigns the Ulafala, then what's next for Roman Reigns? Well, certainly, he has to go after Drew McIntyre, right? And you don't need to be the tribal chief to do any of that. But then what happens? Let's say he beats Drew McIntyre. Then he accepts that Solo Sikoa is the new tribal chief. Like, does Roman Reigns, essentially, does Roman Reigns have to acknowledge Solo Sikoa if Solo Sikoa beats him? Or can Roman Reigns be a bitch about it and be like, oh, you beat me, but I don't care? Because then what's the point? You know, what is the point? So that's a question that needs to be answered at obviously not January 6th Raw, but perhaps the Raw after that. You know, we need to like establish what the hell's going on, and we'll see. I mean, I'm sure these things are gonna like kind of play out and they're gonna make sense one way or another, but you know, the idea stands, right? We need to see how this is gonna go. But the important part of my point here is that this has to have some sort of payoff, right? There has to be a turning point, ideally for both Roman and Solo, you know? And I personally think that if Solo Sikoa is not going to continue as the leader of this faction, then what's he going to do? I just see him wrestling with Andrade. That's what I see. I don't see him like doing anything important. Maybe he can become the U.S. champion. Like that's about as far as he can go. So we'll see, you know. But or maybe like I don't know. It's like a count out. I don't know. The Rock comes out. We'll see. I am excited for January 6th. But what can you do? You know what I mean? We'll go from there. We'll see how it goes. So this Raw, obviously, 0 out of 10. I don't want to say it's the worst Raw ever. Like last week's Raw, I think was worse. But it's really, really bad too. So, you know, take that for what it is. Cuckwads.